Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about objects today. And we're going to do that by talking about both homemade objects and objects that the professionals made for you. So I created this little class called Mystery Messenger. It's going to create little objects that create random messages for you, and they also hold a mystery number. And they can do other things that we'll talk about in a second. And then we'll also talk about strings, which were made by the Java developers. So if I come in here to this class, I've got this little class called Intro to Objects. It's got a public static void main string args. I'm just going to scroll that down just so that you don't get too distracted by it. Okay, so when you set out to create an object, you first have to create a variable that will refer to that object. And again, the variable always has to be of the correct data type. So if I want to create a mystery messenger object, I have to create a mystery messenger variable. So here I've declared that I'm going to create a variable that can only point to this type of object. I've called my variable messenger. And what I want to do is I want to point that variable at a new mystery messenger object. New is a Java keyword, and what it does is it causes Java to go into memory and allocate enough memory for a brand new object of this type, and then to actually go and create that object. This highlighted passage is called a constructor. It always is exactly the same name as the name of the class. So you're going to end up writing the same thing twice, which seems redundant for now, but you'll see why you have to do that later. You do have to have parentheses at the end, and that's because sometimes when you create new objects you have to feed some information into the parentheses. For now we're trying to keep it simple, so I'm just going to leave them empty. So this is how you create an object in Java, and we've seen some of this before, so it should be somewhat familiar to you. So the primary thing you want to remember about objects is that they have both attributes and behaviors. And they can have a lot of attributes and they can have a lot of behaviors. And so what I've done is I've given my mystery messenger objects some attributes. So let's go find out what they are. All of them have a mystery number. So let's go ask what the number is. In order to find out what the number is, we should store it in a variable. So I'm going to create an int variable, and I'm going to call it mystery num, and I'm going to assign this variable a value of whatever this mystery messenger's number is. Well, how can we find out what the number is? What we do is we ask it by calling a method on it. And a method is just a series of commands, or you can think of it as a behavior. So when we have an object and we want to call a method on that object, we type the name of the object's variable by using a period. So then I'm going to say get mystery number. Let's see if this works. I'm going to compile, and that works. Now what that means, since this compiled, it means that get mystery number is a predefined behavior for mystery messenger objects. It means that I did go and define that. Now if I accidentally typed get mystery number with 2 T's, you'll notice that the compiler barks at me because get with 2 T's is not a behavior that was predefined. And so the compiler is going to help you type everything correctly. Well, let's print this up and see what the mystery number is for this thing. So 581 is the mystery number for that particular mystery object. Let's ask it another question. Let's ask it how many messages it has. So I can say, I'm just going to use this same variable, but I'm going to say get num messages. And if this compiles, good, this compiles. That means this is a defined behavior for this object. And I could, we'll go ahead and do it right now. Compile 10. That means there are 10 different messages that this object is kind of preloaded with, ready to give us, and we'll take a look at some of those in a second. But notice that this is what we call a method. This represents a behavior that this object has, and you've seen two behaviors now, right? We can go get num messages, or we can get mystery number. Both of them return a value that is of type int, okay? And when we say that a method returns a value, it means that this part of code that represents the execution of the method actually becomes the result. So messenger.getNumMessages with a couple parentheses becomes the value of 10, which means I can assign my int variable the result of this, because it will become the result. That's how mystery number achieved a value of 10, and I was able to print it up. Previously, messenger.getMysteryNum had returned a value of 500 and something. I forgot what it is now. So methods are the behaviors associated with the object, and those behaviors can return information. They can become information. We frequently say they can get information. Methods always have open and closed parentheses at the end of them, whether or not you put anything inside of it. It's just because sometimes methods require that information be put inside the parentheses. We call that information an argument. Let's do an example of that. Let's say, let's add a message to our messenger object. So here I have my object. I'm calling the add message object, and inside the parenthesis I'm putting the string, this is a new message. I compile it and you see that it works, which means that this method is designed to receive a string in its parentheses. We can also tell from the context here that the messenger object is designed to be able to have messages added to it. Notice that the object is flexible. It can change. It is dynamic. Alright, that's one of the powerful things about objects. You can have all kinds of attributes for the object, and many of those attributes can change, and they can change dynamically as the program runs. And now notice if I'm going to cut this line, I'm going to paste it down here, and I'm going to change this just for clarity, because since we're getting the number of messages, we should call this like num messages. And then I want to print that up instead of the original, and now we should get 11 as the number of potential messages because I've added a message into the messenger object. Sure enough, the result is 11. So we can see that methods can both get information and they can set information. They can take information out, not take it out. They can retrieve information, and they can also change or mutate the object. Sometimes methods require information to be in the parentheses. Sometimes no information is required at all. Sometimes you want to have methods that have more than one argument passed into it. Strings have a method called index of. Let's take a look at that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a random string out of our mystery messenger. So I create a string variable called message, and I'm going to assign it the result of calling the getMessage method on messenger. Notice that this compiles. So now message is going to be some message. I'm going to guess that there's more than one E in this message. So let's find out where all the E's are. So this is a string object. It's a string variable. Strings have a method called index of, which searches the string from the beginning and finds the first location of whatever string you put in the parentheses. It then returns the number, the int, that corresponds with that location. So loc of E1 should represent the location of the first occurrence of the letter E in whatever mystery message we get. I'm going to do this again. So now I have the message object, and I'm calling index of, this time with 2 parameters. Now the idea here is these index of methods are actually different. We say that we are overloading the method because we are using the method with a different permutation of parameter types. And when I hit compile, oh, you know what? This actually doesn't work. That's all right. This is a good teaching tool. You know what ended up happening? This index of method does not allow an int and then a string. But you know what? I bet I just forgot the order of these things. I bet if I delete this and I go back and I paste the string and I put it first, now when I click compile, it does compile. So I just had forgotten the order in which these things are supposed to come in. Now notice Java recognized that the data types were wrong. It was expecting a string of some kind in the first location, in the first argument place, and it was expecting an int of some kind in the second argument place. So remember that everything has to be in exactly the right order, but it only recognizes the type of data. It doesn't know whether I'm looking for an E or an A, right? The actual value of that data, Java can't read my mind. Now notice what I'm doing here is I'm taking the location of the E that we found in the top line and I'm adding 1. So this index of method starts looking from this location for the next E. So this should end up being the location of the first E, and this should end up being the location of the second E. Let's print it all up and see how it works. So you can see I'm system out print lining the original message, then I'm system out print lining the location of E1 and the location of E2. When I wake up, people take up mostly all of my time. Hopefully you know what that's from. Now, when we do locations, we start numbering at 0 because this is computer science. So this is the 0 location, the 1 location, and the 2 location. So sure enough, it found an E in the 2 location. Now, the second method was said to start in the 2 plus 1 location, which is 3, and start looking for an E. So it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sure enough, it found another E in the 10 location. So it's working. So that's a pretty good intro to objects. Just the most important thing to remember is how to create objects. You can use methods to access the attributes of an object. You can sometimes use methods to change the attributes of an object. And sometimes you can use methods just to do all kinds of crazy stuff. But those methods have to be defined for that particular object.